Well, hello again, dear ones. So grateful to be with you here today. So thankful that you're a part of this sacred community, the Center for Spiritual Living, Boulder Valley, and what we're creating. I want to speak to you today about, well, something that I think is a real tension in our lives. Not just you and I, not just this community, but the bigger picture of humanity. It's the tension between what we know and what we are. Most people here don't lack the understanding. We feel a gap between what we know and how we live. I have people all the time sharing this concept with me, that they know how to do better. They know the principles that we teach. And many of you watching would be able to teach the principles of New Thought, and probably are. But the tension happens in how we show up in our lives, how we take those principles and practices and make them real in the everyday. When we're driving in traffic, waiting in line at the grocery store. I don't know about you, but for me, when I'm on social media, I feel that gap between what I know is right, what I know is real, what I know is true, and what I feel like doing when I push those buttons and I want to yell at somebody on social media. Now, the gap that I'm talking about, no way is this a failure. This is not where failure is happening. It's not a failure to want to shout out at somebody. It's the place where growth happens. If we misinterpret the gap, we're going to continue to consume rather than step into becoming. As a few of you may know, I'm offering a new 4-week program that starts, on Monday. Our first live session is Wednesday, the 8th of April. And it's the work of becoming, moving through this gap from what we know to be true to actual embodiment of what is true. And as I was preparing this for you, I'm reminded of that wonderful story of a woman that is cut off in traffic, and she pulls up behind the person in traffic that had just cut her off, and she's doing exactly what we're talking about. She's getting a little upset and yelling and screaming, and might be using the international symbol of oneness, and the next thing she knows, there's a knock on the side of her car, and she turns to her left, and there's a police officer with a gun yelling at her to roll down the window. And so she does, and she's stunned, and the officer says, "Get out of the car, get out of the car." She says, "Why?" And he says, "Well, I pulled up behind you and I saw all these promote peace and coexist stickers and everything else on your bumper, and the way you were yelling at the guy in front of you, I figured this can't be your car. It must be stolen." I trust that's never happened for you. When we misinterpret this space between what we know and what we're becoming, we have the tendency to slip into just consuming talks like this, rather than allowing them to propel us into a point, into a place in our lives where we start to create real change. I was one of those people that would yell at folks in other cars. And I know they couldn't hear me, and I know that, and I didn't flip them off. So I know they didn't know what was going on, but I recognize and I remember the day that my beloved wife asked me when I was going to stop doing that because she didn't like it, and the kids in the back seat didn't like it. And I remembered that I was still slipping back into that space of righteous indignation rather than embodying the love and the peace that I say I want to see on the world. So the shift between what we know when we're in this learning phase and the actual embodiment, the becoming, is the point where learning stops creating change. And I think that's where we are right now as a community. There's nothing more we need to learn. No new class to take. It's nice when you show up to book study. It's nice when we show up to be in the learning space of community. But I believe the time is now to move into this becoming space, what I've been calling beloved community, which many before me have called beloved community. See, becoming is about living what we already know, not finding something new. So what becoming actually asks of us is living in moments of choice rather than having a big insight. This isn't about chasing the next big aha moment. This isn't about chasing the next great process that will change everything for us, that will bring more of whatever it is we seek, or maybe less of what it is we don't like. This experience of becoming is so incredibly rich. Many of you know that and have been following my writings on Substack, and that I have a whole body of work that I've called the work of becoming, because it's me as an author, as a writer, exploring how to traverse the experiences that are happening in our lives. Now, in the science of mind, we have this famous quote: change your thinking, change your life. And many years ago, I was on one of the we were doing a street fair in Louisville. This was a long time ago. And we had a street booth. We had a booth up, and on our banner it said, change your thinking, change your life. And I watched a young man of about 20 years old, mid-20s somewhere, right? Old enough to be living life. And he walked by and he looked at the sign and he said out loud, why would I want to change my life? And I thought about that. For many of us, life is good. I don't need to change my life. I'm having a good time. Things are okay. Yeah, maybe I have, some troubles here and there, or maybe I have a challenge here or there, but I don't really believe I need to change my life. I don't think any of us really want to change our lives. And the power in that phrase for me is the part about changing our thinking. Because we get trapped in this belief that what I have is as good as it gets. Again, we might have some challenges. I might like a little more of this, might like a little more money in the bank account, might like to be in a different relationship or have a different job or have a relationship or have a job or whatever it might be, when we change our thinking, it isn't so much that we change our lives, but it changes how we perceive, how we recognize what is happening in our lives. So this work of becoming is about living what is without trying to make something new, make it something different. What becoming is actually asking us is, again, to live in the moments of choice, moment by moment by moment by moment by moment. We live in this moment of choice. How do I want to show up in the world? Do I want to show up as peace? Or do I want to show up as a relatively reclusive road rager who yells at others or who quietly is frustrated by others? These moments of choice show up in our real decisions, how we respond, how we speak, when we choose to stay in an experience and when we choose to leave. You ever just chosen to leave? To say, nope, not going to do this. Not going to stay in this conversation any longer. We've all been around enough to maybe perhaps have left a relationship. Just said, nope, not going to stay in this relationship any longer. See, ultimately, it's easier to default into what's familiar rather than what we know to be true. Social media, it's more familiar to leave a comment that says you're wrong than it is to take the time to do a little bit of digging, maybe a little bit of research. Ooh, I said that word. A little bit of searching to find out what is true. And when we dare to speak the truth, it can often feel like we're putting ourselves out there to be a target, to be ridiculed, to have others get aggressive and push back against what we're saying. It's easy to default into what's familiar rather than practice what is true. And the patterns we've created over a lifetime, well, they win because they're practiced, not because they're aligned. Many of you know I taught skiing for a very long time. I taught winter snow sports for a very long time. And I would have people all the time that would come to take a lesson that were what they would consider stuck on a plateau. Can't get off the greens and onto the blues. Can't get from the blues to the blacks. Don't know how to ski bumps. And in every occasion, they had developed patterns that were keeping them stuck. Not because those patterns were necessarily wrong, not because they had bad habits. They just had practiced these patterns for so long that they locked in. They locked them in to a specific form of performance. Now, those patterns generally weren't aligned with how the body functions, with how the body mechanics, how we move, how the body can approach the various skills necessary to ski the bumps or to ski a harder hill. And what we would have to do is break down some of those patterns, and it wouldn't happen overnight because we have to practice the new patterns. I don't know how true this is, but I was heard a long time ago that to get over a relationship, a romantic relationship, you needed at least as much time to heal, if not more, as you were in the relationship. So if you were in a relationship for a year and that relationship ended, you needed at least a year to get beyond that, to break the patterns, to break the habits, to break the mental construct that you had created about yourself, about that person, about what it meant to be in a relationship. Now, this is where we often will see that if we don't do our healing, we get the same relationship, just in a different person. Same relationship, different face. So whenever we realize that we've come to a place where we're following what's familiar rather than what is true, or what we want to be, what we'd like to see, how we'd like to show up, it may take a while. I don't know if everything requires the exact number of days, but it may take a while to create those new behaviors, those new belief patterns, to form a new groove in our mental construct. In New Thought, we talk about prosperity a lot. And we talk about the process and the gift and the practice of tithing a lot. And if that word has a tendency to push a button for you, that's okay. What I like to talk about is not so much the has to be. Tithing, by a definition, is 10%. And if the practice of tithing works for you, that's great. If 10% is your number, that's fabulous. There are many stories out there of people that go well above that and have the means and the wherewithal and the ability and the consciousness to contribute much more than 10% of what they bring in from whatever source. Because as we all know, there is really only one source. What I'd like to talk to you about today is a little more what I call committed giving. And the commitment is not to any one specific organization or person or even idea. The commitment is to yourself. The commitment is that I will give as I receive. My wife and I have a very clean habit that when money comes in, when we put the check in, and I love my camera check, my remote checking. I don't have to go to the bank anymore. I take a picture of the check, deposit it, goes right in the account. And when it lands on that account, when that check clears, I electronically transfer. Now, we use the 10% number just because it makes the math easy. We automatically contribute, take 10% and transfer it into a different account. And on occasion, we usually do this every other week or so. We'll go in and we'll look at how much money is in that account, and we'll collectively decide where we want to donate that money. Sometimes it's to a local food bank. Sometimes it's to a shelter. Sometimes it's to spiritual communities. Sometimes it's to individual spiritual musicians or artists. Sometimes it's a work that's being done that we're just inspired by. Sometimes it's a larger organization. And yes, we have some of those organizations that we've made commitments to and that we regularly contribute to because we know that we regularly have X amount of money in that account. Some days there's a lot more money in that account than we had. Like, wow, hey, look, there's more here than the last time. So money, finances is a really easy place to practice this idea of jumping the leap, leaping the gap, making the leap, traversing the gap between what we've learned and what we're embodying. Our ability to serve would be another. Not just tithing happens in financials, but how are we contributing in our service? Where do we give of our time and our talent? Where are we contributing to the greater community? I like to play disc golf. There's a lot of disc golf courses around Colorado. And there are others that like to drink beer while they disc golf and other things. And so there's garbage that gets created and trash cans that get full. And so many of the courses that I play at have a fairly regular trash day where people that play the course can come out and take home a bag of trash, or help carry it from the course up to the parking lot where the local community truck, garbage truck picks it up. Or maybe it's, and I've done this as well, where we go out and we maintain the course, cutting down weeds and filling in ditches and doing different projects to help that which I enjoy make the next round a little more enjoyable. I want to ask you today to consider, where can you be a little more involved in embodying the principle of service in your life? Maybe it's just making a meal and dropping it off for somebody at someone's house. Maybe it is getting involved with a club that you are a part of, or an organization, and doing a little bit more than you've done before. Doesn't have to be a lot. But where can you grow and stretch yourself just a little bit? One relationship, one pattern, one place. Maybe it is in your finances. Maybe it's in how you do your morning coffee or tea. Where can you give? Where can you step into becoming just a little more? Now, I love the opportunity to do this in community because we don't really stretch ourselves in isolation. Becoming implies a relationship. And it is through our involvement with community that we can reinforce what we believe and what we choose to embody. So don't try to change everything. Change one thing. Live one thing you already know, moment by moment. Make the choice and keep doing it and repeat it again and again and again and again. Maybe there's someone in your neighborhood that doesn't get out as often as they should or could. And maybe you create a way to get them in your car and take them for a drive once a week. Or take them out to a public park and take a walk once a week. Or maybe just make a phone call and sit on the phone with them for a half an hour. And share the truth of who you are. Margaret Mead is famous for a quote that says, "Nothing will change the world like a small group of committed individuals, and nothing ever has." We are that small group of committed individuals. We know this stuff. And I know that we live it. But what I'm asking today is to live it a little louder. Live it a little more. Live it a little bigger in our lives. Live like we've never lived before. I believe as we each individually embody the concept of a world that works for all, then we are becoming and we are the beloved community. And that's what changes the world. If you're in a safe space to join me, I invite you to close your eyes and join me in a moment of consciousness. A moment of recognizing that there truly is only one power, one presence, one infinite intelligence, and that oneness is revealing itself as all of life. As my life, as your life, as the lives of our neighbors and our friends, our colleagues, those we don't know, those we don't agree with, and those we have yet to meet. The oneness revealing itself perfectly as love and light and beauty, as health and wealth and well-being and abundance, as service, as our finances, as our contribution to the world. So I invite each one here, each one that may hear these words, into a sacred sense of knowing that the oneness is revealing itself as our lives perfectly, this day, every day. And I make a commitment to myself to be the change, to live the truth, to embody the principles and the practices of new thought in a way that make the world a better place. And that is all that is necessary to embody the truth, to be the living demonstration of truth, of love, to be the living demonstration of love on this world, on this planet, in our lives, as our lives, in service to everyone we contact, everyone we are in touch with. Let's go forth and be love. Love like never before. And call that good. And so I am grateful for this reminder, for this opportunity, for this sacred community we call the Center for Spiritual Living Boulder Valley, for this sacred Sangha. Grateful beyond measure. Grateful to know God's got this and all is well. And I invite you to join me in an affirmation of this truth as we say together, and so it is. And so it is. Thank you, dear ones. Thank you for being with us today. I look forward to being with you again in person soon. But until then, I want to wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.